Okay, welcome to today's webinar. Thanks for joining us. We are joined today by Travis Johnson, the nonprofit architect. If you haven't checked out his podcast, I highly recommend you do so. I think he's probably one of the most interesting people I've met this year, and that's saying a lot because I meet a lot of people. So Travis is an active member of the Navy in addition to being a podcast host, husband, father, and he is on move number 50, if you can believe it or not. So Travis, I know you have a beautiful story from your youth to how you came to be who you are today and what you're doing today. Give us the background.
Yeah, sure thing, Katie. I appreciate it. Yeah, 50 moves right now. Currently active duty Navy, getting ready to celebrate my 20th wedding anniversary this summer. And my daughter's graduating high school next year. But that's a far cry from where I started. You see, before I graduated high school, it was 36 moves, 12 schools, 6 states, 5 foster homes, and surviving 2 murder attempts before I moved out of my house at 16 and graduated at 17. Through all that time, through all that heartache, through all that pain, there was always some person, some group, some nonprofit willing to help keep us sheltered, clothed, and fed. And now that I'm not in that place of scarcity, that survival mode, I feel it's my duty to help the helpers. I've got a little bit of background in the nonprofit world. I served on 2 boards, the Shine Foundation out of Oklahoma City, and Books by Vets, who I also got published with. So I'm a published author, two-time board member, donated about 1,500 hours of my own personal time, donated over $20,000 of my money. So I've done just about every job there is except for being an executive director. Also raised a $500,000 in 2 years for really some small time Oklahoma City nonprofits. So have a lot of experience there. And you're like, well, why the podcast, Travis? How do we get started with the podcasting? So I got stationed in the Kingdom of Bahrain, this little, if you can see this little island looking thing on my wall over here. Kingdom of Bahrain is a small island nation in the Persian Gulf. There's a bridge going to Saudi Arabia. So we're right in the thick of things. For my active duty Navy career, I was there May 2019 to June of 2020. So got the start of COVID while I was in the Middle East. But I started the podcast, one, because I wanted to keep doing great nonprofit work, and two, because I wanted to make sure I did something constructive and productive while I was overseas. And podcasting was just a great way to do that. Please, please, please ask your questions in the comments anytime during this webinar. Katie is going to fill us back in at the end. She's going to ask all the questions. If you got questions about me, the Nonprofit Architect podcast, any of the things that we talk about for podcasting, please let us know. I want to get to all the questions. If you have the question, chances are someone else has that question too. So I want to make sure I get that answered so no one leaves wondering anything about any of the stuff. Ready to get this thing kicked off here. I think I'm just going to share my screen. I wonder if it'll let me do present mode. Katie, you'll let me know if this doesn't look quite right on your end, please, and thank you.
It looks good. It needs to be in present mode, but other than that, looks good.
Yep, hitting that button right now. 10 reasons you as a nonprofits need a podcast. I'm a huge fan of podcasting, have been since I started a show. I heard a few online. I got hooked. It's such a great way, a great medium to connect, get your information out there, all that fun stuff. I already answered the first question. Who is Travis Johnson? Talked a little bit about me, who I am, and what I do. Still active duty Navy. Did 12 years enlisted as an ejection seat mechanic. Went through college. Now a commissioned officer. For those of you in the know, that makes me a Mustang, a prior enlisted commissioned officer. And I'm coming up on 21 years of service, which is mind blowing for me. I never thought I'd get in with my history, with my criminal record from my childhood. I never thought that'd be a possibility. What is the Nonprofit Architect Podcast? We are a podcast that interviews nonprofit leaders, business leaders, consultants, and people with special skills. Could be marketing, could be branding, could be how to do Facebook Lives, how to contact celebrities. We interview these people to give you the actionable steps you need to help build stronger nonprofits. So if you haven't yet check that out, please do. Nonprofitarchitect.org. You can find that. And you can also find on there the Nonprofit Podcast Network. If you've got a show, know someone that hosts a show, I want to get you in my network. It's $0. I'm not trying to make any money off y'all. I'm trying to make sure that we have a hub of information so nonprofits can do it and do it better. So if you know anyone that hosts their own show, get them signed up at the Nonprofit Podcast Network. And if I convince you by the end of this webinar that you should start your own show, love to have you. Love to have you in the network so people can find the resources they need so they can be successful. Definitely get signed up for that. We've got, I want to say 9 shows on there right now. So that's pretty exciting. So podcasting. We're going to go back just one step and say, what the heck is it? Podcasting is just a conversation. There's a lot of podcasters out there that spend time talking to themselves, aka doing their solo show, just talking about whatever it is they want to talk about. There's people out there that do interview shows, which is what I do. I bring on a guest, someone smarter than me, someone that knows something about nonprofit work that I don't know. I get to ask them all the great questions and provide value to my audience. There's also a panel style where you bring in and you have 5 or 6 people of a given industry for whatever topic you want to talk about, and you ask questions or get questions from the audience or people Facebook in their questions, and you have the panel answer the questions. Now, if you're starting your own show, you can do any one of those, or you can go back and forth between them and have, I don't know, podcast panel Fridays, but you have your solo show on Mondays, and maybe you interview someone every other week. But who really listens to podcasts right now? In the last month, 104 million Americans listen to podcasts here in the US. 104 million. That's just under a third of the US. We're pushing 330 million people right now, but you've got people all over the world that are listening. Right now, for my podcast, I'm being heard in 55 countries, which is just mind blowing for me. I'm just a guy from northern Minnesota, happens to be in the Navy and likes helping out nonprofits, and I've got 55 countries that are tuning in one of my recent shows, talking with Wally Carmichael from Men of Abundance. We were talking about that my show is being heard in India. Well, someone that's in the nonprofit space that has been in my network for a long time didn't realize I had a following in India, and his nonprofit operates in India. So now he's excited. He's going to be a guest on my show, and we're going to talk about all the fun things and ways to do business across international borders. So that's pretty cool. I'm excited about that. Can't wait to get him on the show. Uh, when do people have the time to listen to podcasts? Now, I know if you're a busy person like I am, running, doing the active duty military, I've got the family that I care about. I just finished up my master's. I've got all these podcast networks. I host a show and all this other stuff you do. Like, when do you have time to listen to these things? Well, I like to do things with net time, NET, no extra time. So that means I'm listening to podcasts or audiobooks when I'm commuting, when I'm doing errands, when I am doing chores around the house, and most importantly, when I'm exercising. I get on my bicycle. I'm in Oklahoma City right now, so I ride around Lake Hefner, make 2, 3, 4 laps, depending on what kind of day I'm having, and if I'm going to let that wind kick my butt or not. And listen to someone else speak life into my world. Now, if you've been in the nonprofit game for a while, you know that most nonprofits are literally in do mode all the time. They're going to do it, they're going to do it, they're going to get it done, and they're going to do it. And it sounds a lot like the military, but the biggest difference I've noticed between military life and nonprofit life is the military spends 85 to 95% of their time training, learning, running exercises, figuring out how they're going to do it when real life happens. And it seems to be the other way in nonprofits, right? We spend 5 to 15% of our time training and the rest of the time doing. It's almost like we don't have time to do the training that we need to do to make sure we know what the heck it is that we're doing. So when do you learn all the things you need to learn? Podcasting is the way to do it, whether you're going to start your own show or whether you're going to actually just listen and learn. Between my show, any of the shows on my network, or the other hundreds of great nonprofit podcasts that are out there, I can recommend some great ones. If you decide that I'm just not your cup of tea, I understand that completely, but take the time to learn the things that you need to learn in order to be successful. How much does it cost to start podcasting? Isn't it expensive? Well, it can be, right? Just like any other venture, it can be expensive as you want it to be. You can get hung up on fancy equipment like I've got here in the studio with the fancy microphone and the boom arm and the headphones, and I've got the sound mixer and all those things. Or you can do it for free. You can get on a podcast hosting site like Anchor, which is free to join, free to use. You can start right now today with your cell phone. And if you've got earphones, earbuds, great. You can do that as well. Russell Brunson, who's the guy that runs ClickFunnels, which is a multi-billion-dollar corporation. This thing is crazy. Um, he started podcasting just on the way to work. He'd hop in the car, drive into work, click on Anchor, do a live podcast, cost him $0, and he would just talk all the way to work. You can absolutely do that. You can do that for free without taking up any extra time if that's what you want it to do. In order to get the top end, the top of the line system for podcast hosting, you get on Libsyn, Libsyn, Liberation Syndicated. Libsyn is what I'm on. It only costs me $20 a month to host on there for all the whiz bang stuff that I need. And you can build your equipment over time. I did podcasting for a whole year and a half before I had anything other than my laptop. Did the whole first year and a half with just my laptop, and until it started gaining traction, I didn't upgrade my equipment. But you can get the equipment that you need to sound reasonably good for under $100. You can get the equipment you need to sound fantastic for right under $600, and then the world class equipment you're looking at somewhere at $1,500. So depending on where you're at and what you want to get into, you can start for free, and if there's something you enjoy doing, you can go ahead and build from there. Absolutely love that you can do it at whatever level you want to do. There's people that talk about, well, I want it to sound good. I want to have it edited. I want to do that. You can do your own editing. You can hire teams. There's a lot of people out there that just go live. They use Blog Talk Radio or Anchor. They record it live. And as soon as they're done, they just hit publish. Is there some people that are not going to be okay with that? Of course, but they're also not dealing with your schedule and all the other crazy things that you need to do. You can get away with creating your own show, your own podcast for free, and only do it an hour a week if that's what you want to do. You can absolutely create your own show, do it self-hosted on Anchor, talk to yourself, write an individual show, and keep that thing as free and as little time consuming as possible if that's what you want to do. Perfectly okay. But isn't it hard? Travis, isn't podcasting hard? It is no different than having a conversation with anyone you already know. The only thing you really need to know is that if you're doing an interview show like I do, your first 10 shows, surprise, surprise, if you're not used to interviewing people or being on camera or whatever it is, however you plan on doing it, you're probably not going to be very good. If you go back and listen to my first 10 episodes, I'm terrible. I'm not a good host. I don't have the right equipment. I don't know what I'm doing. I haven't found my voice yet. I don't have that clarity of mind. But it's one of those things that if you stick with it, you eventually get better. 10 through about 20 episodes, you start figuring out who the heck you are and what you're talking about. By episode 25, you're essentially a pro. Are you going to be able to fine tweak it from there? Of course you are. But once you hit episode number 25, all of your shows are going to sound magical, wonderful. They're going to be a lot of fun. I remember one of my guests that one of the potential guests I was interviewing to be on the show, they're like, wow, you sound like you've got it all figured out. You know what you're doing. How long you've been doing this? And at the time, I had only been doing it for 3 weeks, and they were completely shocked just how quickly you can start building that good rapport, that understanding what you're talking about, and all of those good things. So it's not as hard as you think it is. The hardest part is actually starting. And once you've started, you learn from there and grow. It's not too hard. People just don't know who we are or what we do. This is something that I hear from nonprofits all the time. If this is you right now, put in the comments like, this is me. Like, people don't know who we are. See, one of the hard things about COVID is you don't get the chance to go to all the different networking events you used to go to, depending on what state you're in. I'm in Oklahoma right now. Oklahoma's open. A lot of the middle of the country is open, and a lot of the coastal countries states are not. Definitely understand that, and you are, comfortable with whatever you're comfortable with. Definitely understand how that looks, but you can have these interviews and you can talk to people all over the country and all over the world. I've interviewed people from the UK, Greece, Italy, Australia. Had a great conversation with a gentleman in Israel doing nonprofit work. And you can find these people anywhere. You can hop online if you do it through Zoom. I record through Zoom. There's all sorts of tools out there, but Zoom is one of the fancy tools I use. But the more conversations that you have, the more your word gets out there. You know, if we're pre-COVID times or before COVID, BC, right? Before COVID, you would go down to your local chamber of commerce, you would start networking, you'd go to some events, you'd maybe hit the Rotary Club, Lions Club, Eagles Club, whatever those are, to get in front of as many people as possible to talk about and share who it is and you know who you are and what you do. Well, now when you're in the online world, you have to make time. You've got to set up these meetings. You got to set up these appointments to try to get in front of as many people as possible. Like right now, I had to get a hold of Katie to see if this was a good fit for me to come on and get in front of this audience to talk about podcasting and what it can do for your nonprofit. Because if you're not spending a good portion of every day talking about who you are, what impact you're trying to make, people aren't going to resonate with that. One of the beautiful things about creating a podcast and talking about these things is once it's created, it's out there, and then people can find you instead of you having to go find them. Absolutely love it. Absolutely love it. If you want to build an audience, this is the way to go. Every single episode that you publish, you're going to get more and more and more people listen to it. I remember my first month in podcasting, and I don't think I had 30 people listen to my show, uh, which when I look back, you know, and that was a year and a half ago. And I just laughed because I was so worried. It's like, oh my goodness, you know, is my message resonating? Do people want to hear this? Give me a shout out in the comments. Be like, if you're worried about people resonating, you know, with your mission and what you're trying to do, if that's a pain point for you, let me know in the comments. I want to see those. I definitely identify with that. And if you look at where I'm at now, just a short time later, I started this thing with no experience, with no, you know, I didn't have a mass following. I didn't have a lot of people banging down my door for, you know, whatever it is I had to offer. Because although I had done some things in nonprofit work, like I really didn't know a whole lot about it. Katie was talking to me before about cause.camp that they've got coming up. I know she's going to promote that later. I had never heard of it, even though tons and tons of nonprofit professionals have been going to this, even though it's been recognized in national magazines and it's hit the news cycle, I hadn't heard about it because even though I've done nonprofit things, I hadn't really been plugged into the nonprofit world. You see, you just have to start with where you're at because people can understand you being new. They can understand that you're being authentic. And even though you may not know exactly what you're talking about right away, people are okay with that because it's real, right? You're not pretending to be someone you're not. What does that look like for me now? Well, since I've started, I'm gonna brag on myself a little bit, is we've hit number 4 in the US. We've hit number 6 in Canada, number 3 in Switzerland, and I got a notification that I hit number 1 in Singapore. I think that only took like 3 downloads because you know how many people in Singapore listen to nonprofit podcasts, but we also got featured in Podcast Magazine, being the top 25 veteran hosted podcast. We came in at number 11 for their feature last October. And then FeedSpot did a nice little piece on us, top 45, I want to say, podcast. And we came in at number 25 for nonprofit hosted shows. Uh, it's amazing what happens when you know it's not about you. I mean, that's why we got into nonprofit work, right? It doesn't say Travis's big old podcast, right? It's the Nonprofit Architect podcast. It's not about me. And I know your cause isn't about you. It's about the mission. It's about the people that you want to impact and the lives that you want to change. And when it's not about you, that's when you can make the big things happen. You can have that big impact. So starting your own show is going to help you get your name out there. It's going to help you build that audience. What if I don't know enough about my mission or my industry to get started? Here's the deal. You don't have to know everything there is to know about your missionary industry. One of the beautiful things about doing an interview show is you just have to ask the questions and you let the guest come up with all the answers, right? So if you are, say, helping uh, homeless veterans or veterans in distress, right? You can interview anyone in the veteran space, anyone that's helping the homeless, anyone from the VA or any organization like the American Legion, VFW, Disabled American Veterans, or any other major veteran nonprofit, and have them talk about what they're doing. And every single person that you interview, you increase your knowledge, you increase your authority, And you're showing the world that even though you don't know everything, you're willing to learn and have those important conversations. One of my favorite things about this is I get to interview people that are excited every day about what it is that they do, who they're impacting, and how they're making a difference. So for me, I get that little, pick me up. I don't know how COVID's been treating y'all. I know a lot of people have been, down in the dumps. I know depression's on an all-time high. I know domestic violence is going up, and a lot of people are zoomed out and they're not interested in having too many of these meetings. I definitely appreciate you all being here today. But for me, I get to hop on a call, meet someone that is really trying to make an impact, that's really on fire for what they do. And all that does is get me fired up, gets me going. I walk out of my office here. My wife's, making lunch or taking care of the house, or one of the many things you do as a household executive. And she's like, "Great call, huh?" And it's like, "Yes." I'm walking out. I'm excited. I'm pumped. I was like, "Did you know so and so is doing this great thing?" I can hardly believe it. I didn't know people were doing this. And every time you get to talk to somebody like that, that picks you up or pours into your life, you've expanded your network. You've met people in the industry that you care about. You can be like, "Oh, this is what I'm doing. What are you doing? Oh, you're doing it that way. Oh, that's interesting. I hadn't heard about that. Why is that the way you're doing it? Is there a special, like, what don't I know?" You get to go this little behind the scenes, this little master class and learn from someone else in the industry, and you don't have to pay for it. It's a little selfish, right? You get to talk to these industry experts, and they're leveraging you for your audience and you're leveraging them for their knowledge. It's wonderful. I absolutely love it. Absolutely love it. Is a podcast hard to maintain? I get this one all the time. This can be as easy or as hard as you want to make it, right? One of the things that people do is they get a podcast hosted on Anchor, Libsyn, Blueberry, Podbean. There's tons of them out there, tons of them out there. And they're like, "Well, how do I get them all on all these other channels?" Right? What happens when you host a podcast is it creates something called an RSS feed. An RSS feed is a little piece of code that when you put it on any site, it automatically updates and populates everything that it is that you do. Right. So on Libsyn itself, I'm posted to like 20, I want to say 22 different channels that automatically publishes to Facebook, automatically publishes to YouTube, automatically publishes to LinkedIn, and Blogger and Tumblr and Amazon Music and Apple Podcasts and. Plus, you can go on your own into all these other different podcast apps like Spotify. If you have an audience in India like my pal does, you can go to Ghana, GAANA, or Geo Saban, which is their big podcast apps in their country, and you can get your show on there as well. All in all, at the end of the day, I think I'm closing in on 50 different apps that you can find my show on, which is just fantastic. There's different podcast networks like the Nonprofit Podcast Network, the New York City Podcast Network, tons of them out there. Some of them are free, some of them are paid. But the more places that you have your show, the better people can find you. Now, the RSS feed is that magic thing that allows me to have all these shows on my website without having to do any maintenance. Every time they publish a new show, every 12 hours, my website caches and the new episodes populate on there. Easy day. I've got my email chain going out with the RSS feed for my website. So anyone on my email list gets to see every new show by every other podcaster on my site. So, 50 shows were published that week. They get an email with 50 shows. 5 shows were published that week. They get an email with 5 shows, but it's all automated. It's not something that you have to do and maintain if you don't want to. If you do want to, if you do want to do things like post all over social media and you want to take and use an app called Headliner, which is a free app, it allows you to cut out little sections of audio, right? And use those for different reasons. I'll get to that more in just a second, though. If you've learned something new so far as we've been talking, post in the chat, say, "Hey, we've learned something new. We really appreciate it." What is the main benefit for hosting your own show? This is the big one. This is the one that nonprofits have struggled with all the time is, what do I post on my social media? What kind of content do I have to create? I want you to think for a second right now. In general, generally speaking, What's the difference between a website you go to once and maybe go back once in 6 months or never go back to again, and a website that you go there every single day, you're always there, you go over and over and over again, it's part of your daily routine, you're always on that website. What's the big difference? You guys know this inherently, but you might not have been asked the question this way. The biggest difference is content, right? Most nonprofit websites, most, not all, there's some really good ones out there. Most nonprofit websites, it's just a digital pamphlet, right? This is who we are. This is what we do. Please give us money. That's great. You've got a way to collect money online that's fantastic. People can find you, people can contact you, but it's not very interesting, right? There's not a lot of reasons to go back. When you have something like a blog, a vlog, or a podcast, you create new content all the time. You can do a daily show, weekly show, bi-weekly, bi-monthly, monthly show, even quarterly if that's your thing. And as long as you're continually producing content, people have reasons to come back to your website, right? Facebook or LinkedIn, where I found Katie, there's new content there every day. The people that are in your network are posting new things. This is what I did. If you're on Instagram, this is what I ate, and this is what I hope to look like during bikini season. If you're on LinkedIn, this is what I've accomplished in my job, and here's something important from my industry. And here I'm looking for a networking opportunity. If you're on Facebook, you're connecting with family, friends, and whatever. I think I'm too old for TikTok. I don't know. Maybe I'm not. I couldn't tell you, but the reason people keep going back to those pages is because there's always something new. Sports, there's always something new on ESPN, news feeds, whatever news you watch, there's always new articles, there's always something new going on. That's the reason you go back over and over and over again. In fact, it's the main difference between a nonprofit website that has a low organic monthly turnout, and I've got a friend that has blogs on websites for a few different nonprofits asking for micro donations. They're bringing in $200,000 every single month because they're asking for 3, 6, or $9. I've got a great episode on that. If you want to know what that is, ask that in the comments. I'll definitely put that out. I'm sure Katie will send out a follow up email. I'll send her my slides. I'll have that episode in there. Katie, hold me to it and make sure we get that done. But it's because there's new content. There's a reason to go back. There's a reason to learn about things in the industry, not just what it is that you're doing specifically, but what's going on in the industry. How is the local legislature handling this stuff? What things are happening in your world? People want to know. And if they don't have a reason to go back to your website, if you're not putting out this kind of content, people aren't going to go. Oh, excuse me. One more thing I wanted to say about content. I mentioned Headliner a bit ago. Headliner is a fantastic tool. If you do an interview show like I do, every single question and answer becomes a piece of content. So if you are unsure of what to post throughout the week for your nonprofit, if you do a weekly interview show, you have at least 20 pieces of content between every question and answer, right? You can pull quotes from the show or little micro clips, and you guys have all seen this, right? They've got a fancy background. Maybe they have a picture of the guest, little wavy line, and it's a little audio clip that you get to listen to and showcase what it is that you're doing. If you have your own show, the content creates itself. Other than promoting, what new shirts or ball caps that you're selling, or promoting whatever events that you might have coming up, or whatever the thing is, having a podcast, having your own show means you know every single day what it is that you're going to post for your audience. You don't have to think of what it is. You've already created it. You just have to piece it out and post it. It's fantastic. I absolutely love it. Can hosting a podcast help us with SEO? It can, and I want to show you the proof, right? Anyone listening to this right now, I want you to go to Google on your device, on your laptop, on your phone, whatever it is, and I want you to look up nonprofit architect podcast. Don't click any of the links. I just want you to bring it up. And as you're bringing this up, I want you to take a look at how far down the list you have to go before you find anyone else. Last time I checked, the Nonprofit Architect podcast, you're going to find nonprofitarchitect.org is going to be at the top, right? And then you're going to start seeing different sites where you can find my show. I should be the entire first page of Google. I should be in the entire second page of Google. I should be the entire third page of Google. And I think on page 4, partway down the list, someone confirm that for me in the chat, please. Partway down the list, you're going to find somebody else. I didn't do anything special in SEO wise to make this happen. All I did was make sure that my show was on as many sites as possible. And because it is, and because people look for and they use different apps and different things, and they search for me, they're finding me. And that causes the Google rankings to go up. Another thing to cause the Google rankings to go up is hosting a show, because every time your website is updated, every single time your website's updated, Google's like, oh, there's something happening here. Oh, we like this. Oh, they're keeping on top of their stuff. So every time you update your website, and if you've got a weekly show, that means you're updating your website each and every week. You're going to climb up the Google ranking, so people are more likely to find your stuff than your competitor stuff. Gots to have a podcast to help you with your SEO. Travis, isn't there over 2 million podcasts? Isn't it late to get in the game to start a podcast now? I can see how you'd feel that way. 2 million seems like a big number. Fun fact about podcasts is about 1.4 million of those are dead. They haven't been updated in months or years. They're not producing new content. Even though there's 2 million registered podcasts, most of those are not your competition. But you're like, Travis, there's still 700,000 active shows out there. True. But if you can get within a month for one episode 150 downloads, you're in the top tier of podcasters out there right now. I know Listen Notes just came out with a feature, and you can check to see where you're on in the rankings. The Nonprofit Architect podcast is in the top 10% of podcasts on the internet, not in the nonprofit category, in all categories. That is something that you can do. That's something you can still get into. And they're like, yeah, but YouTube has got, I don't know, couple, 10 billion or so shows out there, right? There's a few million blogs out there. Look, it's still blue water territory. You can still get in podcasting and make your name for yourself. There's no reason to delay, even though podcasting has been out for, can't remember when it started, but nearing 20 years, if not at 20 years. There's still tons and tons and tons of people that still need to start their own show, have their voices heard, climb through the clutter, and find a way to differentiate your nonprofit as opposed to others. Check that out. How will podcasting help us get it known within our community? Here's the deal. One of the fantastic things, especially about having an interview show, is you get to connect with people that want to use your audience, that want to get their voice out. And you can interview people like your city council, your mayor, your state representatives and senators, and your federal level representative senators, and your governor. That's people in your world that care about what you're doing. They're going to come in, they're going to talk about some of their stuff. You can ask them about what they're doing to help your mission, your cause, your vision, the things that you care about. And it's got some benefits, right? One, you're leveraging everyone that's following them, right? Because when they share the interview on their stuff, or you tag them, you're going to have access to their whole audience. Number two, you're going to have them on record saying they care about what you care about, which is great. Number three is, if they didn't know who you are before, they know who you are now. When your issue comes up, as it always does at whatever level of government, and they've got a question, and they can be like, oh, who was that? What was that interview we did? Oh, we were with Katie. Let's get Katie on the phone and get her involved in this, because now Katie's the expert. Katie is now the go-to person how to do nonprofit webinars, right? Katie's not in her head. Her video's up. I know she's not in her head right now. When you start interviewing your local elected officials, they all of a sudden care about what it is that you're doing. And when that comes up, they're going to bring you into the conversation because you're the only expert they know, chances are. One of the huge benefits of podcasting right there. What is the number one thing to remember when hosting a podcast? It is consistency. Consistency. If you decide to do a show, great. If you have not yet started your show, you should commit to doing 25 episodes. That's 25 weeks. That's coming up on half a year, right? The 6 months commitment. If you're doing a daily show, that just gets you to the end of the month. Reason being, people want to know that you're going to stick with it, right? We already talked that you're probably going to stink when you start. There's nothing wrong with that, right? But you get to 25, you're going to understand how to do everything. You're going to understand the flow. You're going to understand your voice, and you're going to understand what you're trying to say. And when you do that, and when you're dependable, you climb up the Google rankings. More people start tuning in, and people are excited to be like, oh no, I've got to clear my schedule. I know the Nonprofit Architect podcast is coming out soon, and I need to make sure I'm ready for it. Definitely, definitely want to do that. How do I leverage guests as part of my marketing solution? This is a little bit beyond reasons you should podcast. I wanted to give you a little piece of the rest of my ultimate podcast guide. That's outside of the freebie that I plan on giving you here on the next slide. But how do I leverage my guests as part of my marketing solution? When you have a conversation with me and we talk about nonprofit stuff, podcasting stuff, whatever the stuff is, I'm going to send you a follow up email. In that follow up email, I'm going to provide resources that I've created, AKA podcast episodes, that are going to help you with something you're struggling with. If you don't yet have the Google ad grant, but you're not, or you do have it, you're not sure how to maximize it, I'm going to shoot you my interview with Preston Cohn so you can see how to get that, how to use it, and use it for your community. If you don't know what that is yet, it's $120,000 a year in free Google ad spend for you to, it's your whole marketing budget, right? For you to create Google ads to get people to know who the heck you are, what you do, and the impact that you're making. Maybe you want to contact celebrities and you're not sure how to get to do that. Well, then I'll send you my interview with Vincent James and how he got Julie Andrews, Jack Black, and Sarah McLaughlin to be not only help him with his nonprofit, but to create little promo videos promoting the things that he's doing. We have the template, the how to do it, that's all included with the guide. Maybe you don't understand how to create a partnership with an organization like a bank and use their marketing budget instead of their philanthropy budget. Well, I'd send you the interview that I've done with Bruce Rosenthal and how he walks you through that and how he can get them to create the product and give you 150, $145,000, I think he gives or he receives from the bank, and along with the thing that they created to use for marketing and help other organizations out there. There's so many different things to do, so many ways to learn. But when you talk to somebody, you're going to send them episodes that are relevant to their cares, their needs, what they're working on, right? And they're going to listen to your shows. And if they love it, they're going to share it. So create something worth sharing. I know we're closing in on 40 minutes here. I got one more slide. I think I do. There's a freebie. I have a freebie for you. You're going to go to this website, nonprofitarchitect.org, either slash resources. You're going to click the button that says resources. The things that I've talked about and more are in this free guide, 15 reasons to start a podcast. It's going to say $1 on it. There's a discount code in the text that says free 99. Put that code in. You get this thing for free. It's going to walk you through the things I've talked about. And if you're wanting to learn more, there's also the Ultimate Podcast Guide. It walks you through all the fun stuff, but enough about me. I want to bring on Katie, and I want to hear these questions. I want to know what the heck it is we're talking about. We're going to stop this share screen. I'm going to put that web link in the chat so you all have that. Katie, what's up? How are you?
Travis, we have so many questions. Oh my
Good.
goodness, which is
I
a
love questions.
wonderful sign.
I love questions.
Okay, well, brace yourself. So the first
Brace it.
one, I'm familiar with podcasting because I host several as a hobby. What are the tactile benefits I can share with leadership that hosting a podcast will bring to our organization?
Do you mean other than the things that we've already spoken about? How early in the conversation was this one? People are going to know who the heck you are, right? So instead of you having to go to organizations to talk, having to go to network meetings, people are going to find you. They're going to find you casually. They're going to care about the thing that you care about, and they're going to be able to find you. You're going to have that voice heard. And I wish I knew what this grant was. There's even a grant that'll pay for all the podcasting equipment to get you started. I was talking to an organization. Uh, it's like Virginia Health Initiative. Man, I wish I had this at the tip of my tongue. But their board talked about, hey, maybe we should start a show. And the executive director didn't want to do it. And she's like, well, I'll apply for this grant. And if we get it, then I'll start one. She applied for the grant. They gave her the money. So then she had to start one. And she's so glad that she did. Uh, it's going to increase your authority, your knowledge, and your credibility. The things you are, the things you do, and the people you impact in your industry, there's tons, right? There might be thousands. What is there, like 1.5 ish registered nonprofits in America? What makes you different than those other ones? What's the differentiator? Is it one of your programs? Is it how you do your fundraising? Or is it not that you're just operating in the space, but you're becoming an authority and you care more about just your mission in your community, but you care about the thing at large? The more interviews you have, the more people you talk to, the higher your authority and credibility is going to be.
Absolutely. One other tip, so definitely look into the grant, but also if you have a community media center, they usually loan out equipment or will have a space that you can use to record a podcast. I know in this area, we have a lot of people using one center to produce a ton of podcast material. It's amazing.
That's really cool.
Okay, so the society, and I'm going to tell you this next question, there's a lot of questions that relate to it. It's all about content.
Okay.
So the society I work for believes that we need to have a lot of blogs or podcasts before we start promoting. Is this the case, or is it okay to just get going?
Here's the deal. There's always going to be reasons to not start something. Always. Well, I shouldn't start going to the gym until after the full moon because then the werewolves will be whatever. There's always reasons to not do something. And it's the scariest is always right before you start. But as soon as you start moving, you can start out of the gate with sponsors. We had a guy by my ultimate podcast guide, JD Tierney. He got this thing started. He created just kind of a BS show. He brings on someone, they talk about beer and some other stuff, and they bring on some expert and they promise you will learn nothing from the expert. It's hilarious. But before he even published his first episode, he had 3 sponsors on board that fully funded all of his equipment and operating expenses for like the first 6 months. There's no reason to not start, especially when you can start for free.
Mhm.
If you can do it for free, do you even need board approval? I don't know. It's up to you to decide what that looks like for you.
I think it's an ask for forgiveness situation. Um,
Maybe, maybe.
Go
I'm
rogue.
not in charge of any of your stuff, so.
Okay, I love this question. It's a great question. 104 million Americans listened to podcasts last month. Has this number increased since the pandemic? And do you expect that number to change as the landscape returns to pre-pandemic times?
I know this for sure. I know that once, a shift happens in whatever the culture is, as soon as it gets to that tipping point, you can read Maxwell, Malcolm Gladwell,
The
Maxwell,
tipping point.
Malcolm Gladwell, the tipping point. Once it reaches that point of saturation, it does nothing but grow. It's taken nearly 20 years. I can't remember the start of the podcasting world, but it's taken, that far in our society to get to this point where it becomes a thing. Once it becomes a thing, along with audiobooks and different things, there's no reason for it to stop or slow down. People are going to create the content. People are going to find the audience that they want to listen to or the host they want to listen to. And they're going. The average person right now that listens to podcasts, they listen to on average 7 podcasts. You're not asking them to stop listening to their favorite show. You're asking to be one of the 7.
Mhm. Good
If
point.
yeah.
We're seeing a huge shift, but I'll use these webinars as an example. We average about 500 registrations, but a
Mhm.
very small percentage show up live. The ones who want to ask great questions, like the crowd we have today. But people want on-demand content. They want to learn.
They
They
do.
want to do it
They
on their
do.
schedule.
Yeah, this isn't HBO Max. You don't have to pay a subscription fee for the vast majority of podcasts. I think Apple Podcasts just came out yesterday and say they're going to offer a subscription fee. You can opt in, you can opt out. Me as a creator, I can create something, but also they're going to take a chunk of that money. But there's tons of free platforms out there that you can go to whenever you want to. I usually get the question of how long should it be? Well, there's no rule on that, right? Is that a question? How long should it be?
It's about 4 questions, but yeah,
About 4 questions. How long? So there is little pieces of content out there for everyone. Right now, they have flash briefings on Alexa, which I've been told I need to do. I don't know. People just love hearing my voice. I don't know, but it's like 2 to 5 minutes, right? You can say, I would say the name of it, but I have a device nearby, so they might start doing it because it's always listening, one of those government devices. But people do this while they're making their coffee, right? Maybe a 10 to 15 one while they're getting ready in the bathroom. Maybe 20 to 40 minutes they're listening during their commute or an exercise. And you got people like Joe Rogan and Jocko Willink that are doing 3-hour marathons and they've got the most listeners ever. There's no rule. Like if you're a guest on my show, you're like, well, how long is our interview going to be? And I'll say something like, as long as you're interesting, as long as you're providing value. I'm not going to take a 9-minute guest and try to stretch them to 30. And I'm not going to stop someone like Patrick Kirby, who's just got amazing energy and knowledge. I'm not going to stop his hour and a half show at 40 minutes because that's my time limit. You can choose to do that, or you can do whatever the heck you want. You can try one thing one week and try something different the next week. There's no rules, but know what it is that your audience wants and then give it to them.
Okay, you kind of just hit on the next question, which was if we want to do a podcast, can you recommend subjects, resources, mentors that we could use? But really, it's the identity of the organization. It's whatever they want to talk about, right?
Yeah, absolutely. There's some topics like I interviewed someone that works in human trafficking and the sex trade and a few other things. I've gotten some all like alerts that pop up, like Facebook is like, "Are you seriously trying to advertise something about this terrible topic?" And you have to confirm who you are and scan your ID and have to verify your address. So they're not having was it like Russian spies creating BS content that's going to enrage people. So you got to make sure you know who you are and what you do. But Apple, if you can get onto Apple, they filter out all the bad topics. You just got to talk about whatever is important to you and your audience, right? I didn't know what to talk about. And I looked at a lot of nonprofit podcasts at the time, and I didn't hear a lot of legitimate, like how to value.
Mhm.
Um, you might have an hour conversation, but it might only be 3 minutes of real value content for someone trying to learn something. There's nothing wrong with that, but I always want to learn. So I wanted to make sure that I found what I assumed was a hole in the nonprofit podcast world, at least at the time. And I wanted to bring in people that were actually going to teach you the actionable how to steps of how to do whatever the thing is better. So figure out what it is that you're talking about. In every episode you do, you're going to hone your message a little bit more. You're going to hone your target audience a little bit more. You're going to get a little bit more sharp on what it is that you actually want and what it is that you actually do. If you're a new nonprofit, this helps you immensely fine tune what it is that you do, what message you're trying to say, and who you're trying to reach.
Yeah, it's just a good exercise for communications, not,
Absolutely.
yeah,
Absolutely.
absolutely. Okay, so I have somebody here, they're in Canada, and so they have a bilingual audience, and they're wondering how to address that with a podcast.
Here's the deal. There is people in every language listening to podcasts right now. If you are speaking in French, French Canadian, or English, there's someone that's going to listen to you. I've got a friend. She's got a nonprofit. She's out of Boston, but she's Hispanic. She does all her shows in Spanish. She's got a crazy, wild Instagram channel. Does everything in Spanish. Has a huge following. Whatever language of the people that you're trying to reach, there is an audience in that language willing to listen. You can have a Monday English show and you can have a Thursday Spanish show. You can do it in Spanish, but have it translated and get the transcript done in English and post it in a different language if that's what you want.
That's
Ask your
what
audience,
they're
ask your
asking, is
audience
there any way
what they
to,
want and then give it to them. I asked my audience, what do they want? They said audio only. So I did audio, 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 audio. And I'm like, Travis, we love your voice. I want to see what you look like. So I took all the videos I had saved and I put them on Patreon because it's a pain in the butt. And if you want to see them, I'm going to make you pay like $1 or whatever to see the videos if that's what you want to see. And I'm now getting an audience that wants the transcripts. So I'm taking the first 100 episodes that I've done, I'm getting the transcript, and I'm going to put them in a book that's going to have a huge reference guide for nonprofits to say, oh, what did Travis say about marketing? And you go to the 3 or 4 guests that talk about marketing and figure out how to apply this to nonprofit. You're going to have that reference book. Like, didn't Travis say something about the Google ad grant? Oh yeah. Where's that chapter in here? You need to see all the stuff you have to do about it because some people they just prefer text.
True. And that
Yeah.
was, I cut her question off, but, or I'm not sure if it was a he or a her, but they're saying, is there any way to not double the work if you have two languages? But it sounds like it's best to record it twice.
You can, right? You can record it twice. You can have different content for different audiences. You can see out of your, just ask your people, right? People get hung up on this all the time. What kind of t-shirt do I put out? Well, take a little thing, take a 4-pack, right? Make a little quad slide with 4 different designs and have them vote on it.
Yeah.
Whoever gets the most votes, that's the t-shirt you're coming out with. The same with your audience. If you got a bilingual audience, figure out which one wants it more and start there. And if it makes sense, expand to the next one or have someone else in your office do the other language podcast.
Good advice. Good advice. Let's see. Should you have the ability to go back to older podcasts or only have the recent available?
That's really up to you. There's a lot of people out there that put only their 10 most recent episodes are available for free, and anything back behind that they put on a paywall. They use something like Patreon, and they just click a couple of buttons, and all of a sudden you have to pay for this older content. You can do that. That's an option. It really depends on what you want this to look like. Could you use this to monetize? Absolutely. Could you use it to promote your products, your services, your swag, your events that are coming up? Absolutely. It becomes your own marketing beast to use for whatever it is that you want to. If you want people to pay, then set it up so they got to pay.
Okay. So the remainder of the questions tie to how do nonprofits get featured on your program? And um, while you're answering that, there was one more tied to your program. I'm going to try to find it here.
I'm gonna put a couple of links in the chat here for everybody. Nonprofitarchitect.org/resources. That gets you that free guide, that free 99. I see the code in the chat. Appreciate you guys posting that. And I've got this thing called a link tree, which I love it. It's free. If you guys don't have one, you should have one. My link tree's got the cool stuff. Thanks, Rebecca. Linktree's amazing. They just got some new features too. But go read about my bio. You can check out whatever headshots you want to do. There's also a scheduled 30 minutes with me. If you are a nonprofit, you're doing something cool, and you're willing to teach how you do the cool thing, come on, because all of my guests teach something. You're not getting out of this without providing value, right? Hop on there. We're going to talk. We're going to figure out what it is that we're going to talk about, what value you're going to provide to my audience, and then we'll set up a time to record. That way I know what the heck we're going to talk about, and it comes out crystal clear, has lots of value and lots of content. Paula did not see the link. I just posted nonprofitarchitect.org/resources and linktree/nonprofitarchitect. For those of you that don't know, there's a little button down there with 3 dots on it. If you click that before you hop out of here, it says save chat. You can save the chat. And then when Zoom closes, all of the chat shows up on your computer.
We'll also make sure that the links are included with the follow-up email. So
Katie's on it. She knows.
Travis, I can't thank you enough. This was so educational, so wonderful. I think the big takeaway was add value, and you certainly did that for us today. So thank you.
Definitely appreciate that. Thanks so much. Gail, you don't see the links. The links don't pop up unless you as like a blue text, unless you type HTTPS. Oh, Rebecca helped me out with that. Appreciate that, Rebecca. Wonderful. Thank you so much. Thanks from a Canadian nonprofit. I've had like 5 Canadian guests. You can be a Canadian guest on my show.
We have
Absolutely.
we have a lot of Canadian nonprofits that are involved with Nonprofit Hub. It's a big movement.
It is. You guys are doing wonderful things.
Well, let's get back to doing more good.
Let's do it.